I'd like to begin and let all of you tweeters know our handle, which is at DigiMonastery, DigiMonastery. So hopefully you'll enjoy the presentation and do lots of tweeting about us and check our Twitter feed. I'd like to thank my teacher, the 16th and 17th Karmapa, for inspiration for this work. I personally have been working in India, Bhutan, and Nepal since 1970, probably before a lot of you were born. And I started documenting sacred art at that time, and also I started interviewing elders to find out the history that they had in their minds about the sacred art. Because without transmission from one elder to the next caretaker, all that knowledge is lost. When I started doing documentation, it was all written on paper, even before I had a computer. And then I used my film camera. And sure enough, a lot of my early documentation is totally lost because of the monsoon. The paper got eaten by rats. The monastery moved the office and it disappeared. There was a fire. So all of that documentation that I did was lost. And there have been monasteries I've gone to 4 or 5 times working with different generations of caretakers. But now I'm really happy because we can do digital documentation. And all of the caretakers have their smartphones or their iPads, and they're really good at all of the techniques that they need to do really good documentation of sacred art in their own monasteries. Since these are very traditional societies, they really don't want to share the information with you or anyone else or the government or another monastery what their sacred art is. And a lot of it is because you're not supposed to see things unless you've got the transmission to see it. So there you go. Our simple project, very ground level, very inexpensive, is that we train the actual treasure caretakers that come from monasteries and nunneries how to do digital documentation of their own collections by themselves using their own smartphones. So it's sustainable, it's unique, it's low cost, and it totally respects their own tradition. We had the first training session officially in Sikkim in May. We had 40 participants that were monks, nuns, museum curators, archivists, and we had Indian Army participants as well. In the morning was lectures, in the afternoon we did hands-on activities, and we did site visits. You can do this documentation on your own smartphone in whatever language you wish. There are certain legal requirements for proof of ownership, which I won't go through long, but you can see that it entails who did the documentation, the date they did it, where they did it, the measurement of the object, a description of it, and lots of pictures of it. Plus, I like to have them include video files of interviews about that particular object from elders if at all possible. When I started in 1970, we wrote on paper this was not possible. And now, with the techniques that all of the monks and nuns know, it's completely possible because these are things they do every day. Interview their friends, send texts, take pictures. It's a very natural way of documenting. And again, it's totally confidential within their own monastery or nunnery, and that's required. Although the form can change according to the technique in the smartphone or the whatever program they're using, whatever OS they're using, in actual fact, as long as you maintain all of those basics of who did the documentation, where, when you did it, and the measurements and description, etc., with some pictures, that's legal proof of ownership for the monasteries and nunneries so that an art thief can't come steal it and sell it at Sotheby's or Christie's. And the monastery says, well, that's ours. It was just in our shrine hall last week. Unless they have this documentation, there's no proof. And art theft is just outstanding these days. The same cartels that are doing drugs and guns are into the art theft. And the monasteries from this area are prime targets because they have had no documentation at all, no proof of ownership. We also taught basic risk assessment and disaster mitigation. That is very important because of fire, earthquake, flood, the yearly monsoon, and art theft. It's so important to understand what to do in terms of a great disaster, because that's another time when the thieves come in and steal, when there's chaos. We had a wonderful time in our afternoon sessions. Everyone caught on really fast. And a lot of the monks and nuns have gone back to their monasteries and begun their digital documentation already. And they're teaching others. From our first project, we had 40 participants, four South Asian countries. And it's sustainable because the people that learn go back to their monasteries and nunneries and teach others. They won't need us to teach for long. I'm not going to live that. I'm not going to live forever. But I'm really happy to be working with this new generation of caretakers who are so fast on their smartphones and iPads that they pick up documentation like that. But when I first started teaching it in 1970, it was like, and then you have to write this, and then you have to write this. But this generation is a dream to work with. Again, it's unique, sustainable, and very low cost. I want to thank you, and I love questions. I think I've lasted maybe a little longer than my 3 minutes. And I thank you so much for appreciating our project and for encouraging us to protect the monastery treasures from theft in this very ground level way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to this last project. I think